All right, everyone, we've got another episode of the Public Relations Declassified live stream here today. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into this today. So we're going to talk about Lyft's PR crisis, and it looks like it may already be over with. So if you guys saw, I'm not sure if it was the last episode or a couple episodes ago, we talked about this PR crisis that Lyft was about to face because a rapper named Dank DeMoss, not exactly a small lady here, was suing Lyft because she was unable to get into the vehicle. The driver would not let her in, said that she would damage the vehicle. And I think we all can agree that that's a very valid concern. She's definitely on the bigger side, and a vehicle is not built to handle that much weight in one seat. I think there was something in an Outkast song back in the day about this. But there may have been a development in this PR crisis that will put Lyft in a really good spot that should pretty much end the whole situation. So we'll go ahead and roll this clip here, and then we'll talk about that.
This the only seat y'all got?
What you want? What you need?
There's one more.
A bigger chair or something?
Is she already little?
We had
That's what I'm talking about. Good. This is accommodation.
There you go.
All right, so accommodations. Yeah, accommodations indeed. All right, so here's the thing. She could not fit in a regular chair. She had to basically have them pull out an entire couch to put her in. And this basically validates everything Lyft was saying about a vehicle not being built for this, not being able to handle somebody of this size. And she's here asking for special accommodations, which also indicates that, yes, this is not a normal situation. So effectively, in my perspective, this will have killed the PR crisis and put Lyft in a really good spot to where they don't have a lot to worry about. In that other episode that I mentioned, we did talk about this in terms of, what Lyft could do to protect themselves, how they should be proactive, how they should, defend themselves, what they could do to really strengthen their case, which they were in a good spot to begin with because the public already supported them. They already said that this is a ridiculous lawsuit. It shouldn't be happening. This may just be the final nail in the coffin for her lawsuit, and that's really going to put Lyft in a strong position here. So, all right, that's a wrap for that one. We're going to talk about an interesting topic here that you guys definitely need to be leveraging in your marketing, and that's something called newsjacking. So we're going to talk about why you need to leverage newsjacking both for exposure and for authority. Now, if you're not familiar with the term of newsjacking, basically this is where you're leveraging something that people are already talking about, something that's in the news, something that's on social media, a hot topic, right? Those of you who are a little bit older, you may have remembered kind of this water cooler. People say, oh, we talked about this, around the water cooler. And that's kind of what social media has become. But this is a phenomenon that is very effective in marketing and in public relations, helping you to not only get the exposure, but also kind of create that authority status. And there's a few reasons for this. The first is that, like I said, people are already talking about it, so others want to get involved. And we've got this primal urge to want to be the first person to tell you something, right? If you know something, a secret, and you have the ability to tell somebody that, that's something that it feels good. And it makes that other person feel good because now they're getting this inside information. So there's a deep psychological play here where being able to share something that somebody doesn't know, not just, a piece of information or a fact, but something that's, a lot of people are interested in, that has a profound impact for you. But then beyond that, people want to share their opinions. And in some cases, it may be them telling you that they agree with what you think, right? They want to be seen as being aligned with you. They want to be seen as, sharing your views, your values. And that's a powerful driver. The other is they want to tell you how stupid you are for thinking what you think, right? So this is something we see a lot, especially on social media. You can post something and, if you've got a decent sized following, often within minutes, you can have the world piling up to tell you what an idiot you are for thinking that. So this is a really interesting way to get people to engage with your content. And then that engagement creates this tremendous opportunity to get discovered. So, when we talk about trending topics, A lot of times people think about hashtags and stuff like that. Hashtags are kind of a dying thing, so don't really worry about it from that perspective. Look at it more from an algorithmic perspective. So what'll happen is if you're posting about a topic and it's something that a lot of people are interested in, a lot of people are currently talking about and engaging on content like that, what will typically happen is your content will start showing up in their news feed, right? So this is an algorithmic thing. It's not a thing where you put in a hashtag and then people go and click on that hashtag and go find it. Although that can happen, it's just kind of an outdated approach to things. Just think of it more from an algorithmic perspective. You're talking about this thing, other people who are already consuming content on that, they're already, and when I say consuming, what I mean is, let's say somebody posts about a topic. This Dank DeMoss thing could be an example of that. If I'm scrolling through X or I'm scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and I see a post about that and I linger, right? I sit there a little bit longer and I'm reading that post or I'm watching that video. That's engagement. And that's something that the algorithm is looking at to determine, is this the kind of content that me as a user is interested in? And if that's the case, then the algorithm is going to start showing me more content like that, right? They want to keep users active and engaged on their platforms, so they're going to show them more of what they like. So if you're creating content like this, it's more likely to be seen by people who have an interest in that topic. Now, the other side of it, of course, is they could go search for it. That's always an option as well. A lot of times, if I'm covering a story, I'm looking at some of these PR crises that are going on, I will obviously scroll through and I'll see it in my feed, but I will also then go to the search tab on whichever platform, and I'll look and I'll see what else is out there. Other people are going to do the same thing. They're going to look for other content like that, and that's another way that you can get found in the feeds. All right. But when you're doing this, when you're creating this content, there's going to be a few different things that are going to play a big role in how many other people are going to see that. So obviously, if people are liking it, clicking the like button, that's going to be helpful for you. So you want it to be something that they're going to agree with in that case. That does signal to the algorithm that they like that content and they want to see more of it. Comments have an even bigger role, though. So if people are commenting, whether it's positive or negative, that signals to the algorithm even more so that the people are interested in this content. And the interesting thing here is that what happens from there is, if they're commenting, now their followers, their friends are going to see their comment, which then drives some of those people back over to your original post, whether it's positive or negative. Now, this is where you have to be kind of careful, because if you get on the wrong side and if you don't have a large audience and you're attracting mainly the detractors, and this can happen a lot when you get somebody big, somebody with a very large following, if they go comment on your post, and now all of their followers, who many of them may agree with what they think, come over here and start attacking you, then it creates a very bad situation for you. But in any case, positive or negative, it will expose you to more people. But this just highlights the importance of also building a large audience yourself as well. And then shares have an even bigger role. So the more people that can share your post, the more people that can retweet your post to their audience, now even more of their audience is going to see what you're talking about. And then those people are likely to engage. Hopefully you're getting the people who agree with you who are sharing your content, because then their followers will likely come and engage on your content in a positive way. But again, don't be afraid of negative content, right? If people are coming up here posting negative shit on your posts, that's okay, because that's going to lead to more engagement. Even if it is bad, even if people are telling you how stupid you are, that's okay. As long as you believe what you're saying and you genuinely stand behind that, you're going to be okay. All right. So I'm going to give you guys a few examples. I've got one this morning, or I actually posted this last night. I took a screenshot of it this morning at around 5:30. But I've been covering the PR crisis going on with Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni. Posted it last night around 5 p.m. When I got up this morning and was putting everything together for the show, I took a look and it was like 220 something thousand impressions so far as of 5:30 this morning. Chrissy, can you take a peek at it and see what we're looking at as far as current impressions. In the meantime, while she's pulling that up, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a few other examples that I've used. I've been covering a lot on the WordPress PR crisis, where basically Matt Mullenweg has been burning the WordPress community and brand to the ground. There was a big PR crisis with Google that was going on for a while in a lot of different fronts, right? The HCU update, some of the fraud that was going on the back end with their paid ads, some of the data leaks that have been happening with them, right? So these are some of the things I touch on from a newsworthy perspective, right? We're hitting on these trending topics, and it ties directly with what I'm doing from a PR perspective. And that's something, like I said, people are already talking about it. They're already emotional about it. They're seeing it covered in a lot of places. So it's a great opportunity to get out there and leverage that momentum for your own marketing, right? Chrissy, were you able to pull that up?
Yeah, we're at
Yeah.
451.8.
All right, so almost 500,000 impressions in less than 24 hours here. So that's a little wild, but it's an example of, and Chrissy, if you could drop that, if you could drop a link to that tweet in the chat or in the Facebook group, so that other people can pop in there and see that as an example. But take a look at it. In this case, everybody, there is mostly positive responses to it. I would say overwhelmingly, like 99.9% of people are agreeing with my take on the situation. That was not always the case. When I first started covering this particular story, I was getting a ton of people who were like, "Oh, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. She's going to be fine." Da da da. Well, as it's gone on, it's gotten worse and worse for them. And I mean, so bad that like Ryan Reynolds has a gin company, and he's actually had to shut off comments for that gin company entirely so that nobody can post on any of their tweets, right? Look at Ryan Reynolds' X profile as well, completely blasted all over the place. So it's one of those things where in the beginning I covered it. I had my perspective of where this was going to go. I definitely got some negative comments in the beginning, but it's overwhelmingly shifted towards agreeing with what I'm saying. So just be prepared for that. But this is a tremendous opportunity here to get out there, cover what people are talking about, and use that, leverage that to create tremendous exposure for your brand. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Duracell and how they just got handed a huge PR opportunity. Now, we're going to be talking about this from the perspective of Duracell and what they can do with this. But I want you guys to think about this from the perspective of how can you take this situation and basically model it in the event that you come into an opportunity where somebody says something about you and your brand that you can then leverage in your own marketing and your own publicity. So we're going to go ahead and roll the clip here. This is a clip from Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing for his role as Secretary of Defense not too long ago here.
What kind of batteries do you put in your night vision goggle?
Duracell.
All right. So this was the kind of thing that like every company would love to have a tremendous opportunity like this, right? It's free publicity, but it's also tremendous branding. It's also, it creates a position of authority again. And so let's say that if you were in a situation like this, right? So what should Duracell do? And basically you should do the same thing that I'm going to explain to you what Duracell should do. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation. So if I was managing Duracell's comms, first thing I would do is I would take this clip and I would post it to every single social media platform, every single, I would put it on the website. I would use it in email marketing. I would use it everywhere possible. I would even put it on some of the television commercials, right? Because this is something that really presents that brand in a positive light, in a very powerful way. Because think about it. Nobody faces more austere conditions than the military, right? So if we're choosing to use Duracell for our electronic devices while we're out there in the water, the rain, the mud, the desert, the heat, the cold, everything, then that's something that this is a great battery, right? Like everybody's going to definitely take it that way. So once they've got this out in the social channels, they've got this in their other marketing channels, they've got this on their website and all of that, Then what they need to do is start pitching this to the media. So who should we pitch this to? Well, you go out and you find journalists who are going to cover stories that would be of interest to people who want a very reliable battery. So anybody in the tech field, right? There's a lot of different devices that use batteries, regular batteries, not just, there, of course, we've got devices like, you've got a drone or an RC car or something like that that's got its own special battery. But there's a tremendous amount of devices that require batteries like this. So you start reaching out to the tech reporters that cover those types of products. You start reaching out to the military publications. There's a ton. We Are the Mighty. I'm drawing on military.com, right? You've got a ton of different publications as far as websites that produce articles. You've also got podcasts. You've got YouTube channels, right? So they should start pitching all of those. Outdoor publications as well. Sports, and then also family, right? If you're a parent, you've got some young kids and you're going to be going out camping, let's say, for example, do you want your flashlights, your lanterns, your various devices that require batteries like this to go and die while you're in the middle of this camping trip and you've got some, uncomfortable, angry kids now screaming and crying? No, of course not. So these are all tremendous opportunities to get out here and really pitch the virtues of this battery and get a tremendous amount of publicity, especially while this is something that everyone's talking about. And then from there, what I would do if I was running Duracell's comms is I would start a series highlighting service members. And I would do little 3 to 5 minute segments where we're breaking down, what that person does in their day-to-day job. And, I wouldn't even touch on the battery aspect, right? This is just a thing to highlight these service members, but it's produced by Duracell. And, you don't need anything crazy. You don't need a big giant logo splashed on it. You might have, something subtle at the end. You might have, a mention, maybe in the footer down there somewhere on the video, whatever. But this is a great way to get this great content. And then what's going to happen when that video goes live, right? If I had a video that Duracell had created of my life in the military, I'd sure as hell share that, right? Well, guess what? My family's going to share it. My friends are going to share it, right? So now you've got all of these people sharing this content. And then, all just the people who love and support veterans as well. So it becomes this huge kind of grassroots effort that creates a groundswell of exposure for Duracell. All right. Then I would also start engaging with and highlighting military and veteran accounts on social media. So, you've got the low friction side where, they can take the Duracell accounts and go to them and start commenting on their posts, start liking their posts. But then you can also share their posts. And even better, you share it with some commentary, right? You're sharing it and saying, hey, this organization here, Heroes Media Group, for example, a friend of mine, Adam, runs a podcast network exclusively of veterans, right? So let's say that Duracell was going to do something about him. They go take one of his posts and they share it and they say, hey, this guy's doing great things after the military. He's, built this podcast network for veterans to go and start a podcast and generate revenue and build a brand and all this stuff and da-da-da. And they're presenting an image of what they do. They're not doing it. They're not directly promoting Duracell. They're promoting that veteran. They're promoting that organization. They're promoting the people that he helps and serves. This is a great opportunity for them to do good, but then by proxy of that, they're also getting a ton of exposure, right? So this is a super cool way that they can do that. And then they could also launch or align with veteran nonprofit groups. And that could be in terms of manpower, or it could be in terms of financial. They could, stroke a check, whatever. But these are all things that you guys can do if you have an opportunity like this that pops up. There's a little piece of publicity, whether something comes up on TV about your company, something is published in a magazine or on a website, whatever. A lot of these things that we're talking about as far as what Duracell can and should do are all tactics that you guys can employ as well. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about 3 critical questions to ask yourself before responding to online attacks. Now, if we're out here creating great content, we're out here engaging with the public, we're marketing our business, there's going to be attacks. You're going to have situations where people are going to have something negative to say about you. Now, it could blow up all the way to a full-blown PR crisis. It could be something much simpler. But we want to look at the situation and really determine exactly what we need to do before we make that response, right? So the first question that you want to ask is, did you really do something wrong? Now, is this really, so if we're answering that question, right? So is this really a PR crisis, or is this just an irrational person who's attacking you, right? They've got an axe to grind. There's plenty of them out there. If you've spent more than 5 minutes on social media, you've seen this in firsthand. And most of you have probably directly experienced it as well. So what you have to look at is, look at it from the perspective of not just, is the person attacking me, but is this something that a rational person would see as a problem, as something significantly wrong? Or is it just, this issue that somebody's blowing out of proportion, which happens a lot. So if the answer is yes, then you have the potential for a PR crisis that you are going to need to address. But don't assume that you're safe just because the answer is no, because there are a lot of irrational people out there, and irrational people often know a lot of other irrational people. And it kind of creates this mob mentality where people will start to attack you, and then others want to jump on. In some cases, they're just doing it because they're trying to get that engagement, especially on X. There's a lot of that kind of activity over there. And that's the kind of thing that can spiral out of control pretty quickly. So even if it's not a real problem, that doesn't mean that you're in the clear yet, right? So the next question that we want to ask ourselves is, can that person or those people or that organization generate significant publicity? And when we say publicity, we're not just talking about, being something about it being in the media, right? It doesn't have to be on TV. It doesn't have to be in a magazine or on some major website. It could just be people attacking online and jumping on that. So if they've got a very large following, that absolutely can create a massive PR crisis. In many cases, it could be even bigger than traditional media. I mean, look at an example of like Joe Rogan's podcast, for example. That podcast by itself gets more viewers than CNN does as a whole, right? So, social media can have a far bigger effect than most people realize. So if they are somebody that, or organization, people, whatever, that has enough reach, a large enough audience that they can create a tremendous amount of exposure for this, then you probably do need to respond publicly. If no, then it's best to handle that privately and or delete and block that person, right? So if it's somebody who's just like, let's say they attack you one time, they're giving you some criticism, in a single response. That's something you can just ignore a lot of the time if it's not an actual issue. If it is an issue and you feel the need to respond, just look at what their reach is. If it's small, then that's something you're going to want to handle privately, right? Reach out and DM them. Or if you already have their contact information, right? Maybe they were a client, a customer, whatever, and you've already got their contact info, send them an email, or even better, pick up the phone. If you can get on a phone call or a Zoom call with them, there's a lot better kind of personal connection here, right? And it's easy to be an asshole to people online, digitally, when it's just some pixels that you're staring at on a screen. But when there's a human on the other side of the screen and you're watching their face and you're interacting with them in that way, it's a very different situation. And they're more likely to be empathetic. They're more likely to be more responsive and receptive to what you're saying. So if that is the case, take it private, handle it there. If you respond publicly and they don't have a big enough audience to really impact you, the problem you have there is it could create a scenario where now your happy customers or clients can see this and start to think, well, hey, maybe there is something here. Maybe I should look deeper into this. And now you're kind of sowing some discontent among the people that you're working with who are already happy. They already like what you're doing. And now you're starting to sow seeds of doubt. So this is why it's really important to handle it privately in that case. The other side of it is we talked about the algorithm. The algorithm applies here as well, because let's say you get into a pissing match and you're going back and forth and arguing, or even just going back and forth and you're being reasonable, but they're being an asshole. A lot of times what will happen is now their audience sees it. Well, now because of that engagement, the algorithm will also show it to more people, even people outside of their circle. So it's going to start being seen by a much larger audience. And then you've got the other added issue where, let's say an investigative journalist sees it, and they're always looking for conflict like this. They're always looking for problems to talk about. There's somebody in the community who is going through a bit of that right now, where a problem originated online in a private Facebook group for I'm not going to give too many details here, but it was housing related, and some things were blown out of proportion. A lot of attacks were made, and this ended up getting in the hands of an investigative journalist in that area. Well, she now saw it, and now here's all this ammunition where she's got all these people who are very amped up. They're very eager to talk about this problem. And she ended up doing a story about it. And then also she happened to know a couple of other journalists in that area, and she brought it to their attention as well. And there wasn't really a lot he could do within that environment. So this blew up in a fairly big way pretty quickly. And as a result of that then turning into several news stories, because there was all of that engagement that put it in front of the journalists, what ended up happening was he lost some key opportunities within his business. He lost some financial relationships. He lost some joint venture partners, and things were going really bad at a time when things were already challenging for him for various other reasons. So this is the kind of thing that can blow out of proportion pretty quickly. The problem that occurred was nowhere near the way it was presented on social media. But then you had all these other people just kind of latch on, and it snowballed, right? The problem, which was a small problem, I'm not going to say there was not an issue, but it was not an issue that he caused. There was issues that just naturally occur in this industry, right? But because everybody jumped on and they blew it up into something much bigger than it was, and then more and more and more people saw it, it resulted in tons of media coverage about the situation as well. And then that had some pretty significant downstream impact for him from a financial perspective, where he started to lose opportunities. He had people pull out of deals, and things just went really bad. So we want to try and avoid that if possible, right? And I know that can be challenging sometimes, because when somebody attacks you, you've got this natural inclination to stand up and fight back, right? You want to tell them why they're wrong. You want to make sure that the world knows that they're wrong. And I get that, and I'm that way. I think most of us are to a degree, but you have to look at it, almost reptilian, right? Look at it purely from a logical perspective. I say logical, I mean, we're taking emotions out of things, right? Not that reptiles are logical, but we want to look at this purely from a logical perspective. We want to take our feelings out of it. How we feel does not matter. It does not play a role in this, because if we let our feelings control our actions in a scenario like this, what's going to happen is we're going to get amped up, and we're probably going to say something stupid, but we're almost certainly going to make the problem worse. So we want to avoid that engagement there if possible. Take it offline, take it private, deal with the person individually. And then, as far as the other people who may be jumping on, there's some tactics that we can talk about in another episode, where there are things you can do to kind of get the other people to quiet down. And there's kind of a gradient here, right? There's some good things. There's some positive ways to do that. And depending on the nature of the situation, and depending on, kind of where your boundaries lie, there's also some gray areas, some more questionable tactics that you can use to quiet some of these people down as well. We'll probably talk about that in another episode, though. And then the other question you need to ask, the third question is, can you and are you willing to fix the problem? Now, this is going to sound brutal, but if you cannot or are not willing to fix the problem, then responding is going to create more negative publicity. So if you're going to tell them, well, nope, that's just the way it is, and we're not going to do anything about it, go pound sand. That's going to piss them off. Absolutely. And it's probably going to put them on a mission to come after you, to come be more aggressive. They're going to probably ask their friends to chime in. But then as that starts to happen, this again is where we start to get into that algorithmic impact, where the more people that are talking about the thing, the more people that are engaging with the thing, the more people that see it. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, and the answer is no, I cannot or I will not fix the problem for whatever reason, and there may be perfectly valid reasons, and there also may be perfectly stupid reasons. But that's a decision you're going to have to come to based on your business situation. But if you can't or won't fix it, then don't respond. You're just going to have to, at best, hope that if you don't respond, eventually they'll run out of energy, give up, and go away, right? And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it takes hours, days. Sometimes it takes months. It just depends on the circumstances. We had a situation, we were handling a little PR crisis for a national company where they had a number of people who used to be involved with that company who were maliciously attacking the company. And it took, I think it was a good year, maybe a little bit longer, before we got them to fully stop attacking the company. And this was really just, in that case, there wasn't a lot we could do specifically to them or with them. Like, they had no interest in negotiating. They had no interest in talking. They didn't want to be involved in any way with any kind of discussion. So we basically just had to sit and wait and ride the whole thing out. During that process, of course, we put out a lot of positive publicity to kind of push that stuff down. But because they didn't care, they didn't want to hear anything the company had to say, there was nothing to do to slow that down. So we just had to wait until they got tired of it. And, that's one of those things where that depends on what kind of people you're dealing with. If you're dealing with other highly successful people and they're busy, they're productive, they want to get shit done, they want to have an impact, generally they'll attack for a bit and then they're going to go back to doing what they need to do. They're going to focus on, building their business, getting to the next stage of their situation. So if you're dealing with somebody who's, this may sound a little harsh, but if they're broke, if they don't have much going on in life, then they're probably going to keep attacking you for a while. So, in a case like that, it might make sense to find a way, even if it doesn't make sense for you, if you're losing money by fixing the problem, even if you're 100% in the right, sometimes it makes sense to just give in, give them what they want in order for them to go away. Now, if you do that, you just need to make sure, you've got a good lawyer and, have some kind of contract in place, non-disclosure, you have non-disparagement clauses in there, settlement clause where once we do this, everything's over with. This is, settled. It's all fine and good. We're on even terms, etc. Right? It's a case where if you come to that point, taking a loss might be the best choice just to end the situation. Right? So I generally recommend fixing the problem, even if it costs you money, even if you're losing. Like, let's say, I'm just going to throw a round number out here, right? Let's say $1,000. Let's say they paid you $1,000 and you turned around and did $1,500 worth of work. And now you've got this problem. Well, in some cases, in the long run, it may be cheaper to just say, look, I'll pay you out. I'll give you $2,000 back, right? You paid me $1,000. We did $1,500 worth of work. So we're already at a loss here, but I will pay you $2,000. We'll give you your refund plus, some money for, your frustrations, just for the problem to go away, right? So we all can go back to focusing on productive, useful things, right? You have to weigh that out. Sometimes it's a shitty choice, but financially and strategically, it's the right choice. So that's what I recommend in every opportunity where you have this, right? You want to make sure that you're making the problem go away, because look, if this stretches out, if this becomes bigger, then it could cost you a hell of a lot more than that in the long run. I wrote an article a while back. Entrepreneur asked me to cover, kind of how you handle a PR crisis. Some of the things we talked about in here are in this article, but if you guys go and Google, go look up my entrepreneur column. This article is out there, and it breaks down a lot of this stuff, and some of the strategies behind it, some of the tactics, the mindset around it. So that's something I would encourage you guys to go check out. It's a great article, and it covers a lot about this. That's a wrap for that one on responding to online attacks. But keep in mind, the bigger you get, the more of these attacks you're going to see, right? Whether it be in terms of, strictly social media, or, in the broader sense, you're getting featured in the media, you've got people talking about you all the time. Once you start to really become a significant figure in your industry, or even just, let's say you're, just like an overall influencer or whatever, the bigger of an audience you get, the more critics you're going to get, and the more intense that they're going to be. So this is something you need to be ready for, and you really need to just try to take the emotions out of it. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about Jeremy's PR PSA. So keep track of your past statements and stay consistent in your words and actions, right? So what are we talking about here today? Well, I've been covering the Blake Lively PR crisis for a bit here, and it's definitely not going the way she had expected. And what we have found here is more evidence continues to come out along the way, and all of it is supporting Justin Baldoni, the one who is suing her for defamation, right? So, in the beginning, initially everything was in her favor. She went out on this kind of, media blitz, went through, this article about the situation went out through New York Times, which has a history of engaging in this kind of tactic for various people. Good friend of mine had something similar happen where she was falsely attacked and defamed by the New York Times, and she ended up winning as well against the New York Times, which is kind of a unique situation because most people don't have the balls to go up against any media outlet, but especially one of that size. But what we found is, as more evidence kept coming out, Baldoni's texts were eventually released. There was leaked video from the movie set that confirmed what he said and disproved what she said. Not too long ago, I posted about a website that he launched, which basically had everything, all the receipts, right? It was text messages, it was timelines, it was all kinds of communications, it was audio files, all kinds of things. And then just yesterday, I came across this video where
it's just as
Lively
important
was
to say,
speaking
okay,
at Forbes.
I believe in this, and that's why I'm standing up for it, and that's why I'm not being difficult. And then there are other moments to go like, am I the asshole in the room? Like, what is happening here? I would show up on a set. I knew that they just wanted me to show up and look cute and stand on a little pink sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say. But I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that once they saw that I was able to offer that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do. And so it was a really strange position to be in because I felt like I don't want to just be an actor. Like I want to have more authorship.
All right, so this is basically her describing exactly what Baldoni accused her of, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, this is the nail in the coffin. If you look at any talk about her online, any talk about Ryan Reynolds online, or any of the things that are tangentially associated with them, public opinion of them has shifted dramatically. Now, in the past, high-level people could get away with things like this because who the hell was going to see it, right? You've got this event that happened. This video is actually from a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. But I'm sure she didn't think that this was going to pop back up. She also didn't think that a lot of the other pieces of evidence were going to pop back up. But they did, right? The internet is forever. And it's not just websites. It's not just social media. And when I say social media, keep in mind, it's not like you could go back and scrub your timeline. You can start deleting posts. You can start deleting videos. You can delete all kinds of things. But there's several services out there that constantly crawl and archive the web. So there's been cases where people have said, oh, I never agreed with this policy, and I agree with this policy instead. But then you go back through some of these archive tools, and they've got that person's tweets, which have been deleted, but they're still accessible on these other platforms. So it really damages your credibility as a brand. And that's true whether we're talking about business, politics, just individual, whatever. So the internet is forever. There's tons of stuff out there. And then also keep in mind, there's also mobile devices. So, I mean, obviously we're thinking of these devices like, oh, we're going to go on Twitter, we're going to go on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. But what about just somebody recording a conversation, or recording you're on stage saying something and maybe nobody else recorded it, but somebody's got that video and that pops up later, right? There's a client of mine. We're not going to talk about the industry or really any details, but in the industry that this person is in, they were doing something years and years and years ago that was contrary to what they were doing in their industry today. And it was a thing that would basically have destroyed their business. If this video had leaked anywhere, it would have been the end for a very large company and everybody associated with it. So make sure that whatever you're doing out there aligns with who you are, and just be authentic. Don't lie about what you've done or said. Whatever you've done or said, stand by it. And if you no longer believe that, then you say, I don't believe this anymore. I used to think that. I see the errors of my ways, and now I believe this. Here was kind of how I got from there to here, and that's why I think this now instead of that. But if you're going to change your position on a thing, you have to be authentic about it. You have to talk about, how you made that journey, that transition, and be transparent, right? So I know we've got a couple of people from the community here who are going to chime in. So I'm going to go ahead and roll to that for a moment here. All right, Chrissy, if you can go ahead and pop them up when you're ready. Tom, good to see you, brother. Aaron, hey, Ron. All right, what you guys got? Oop, are we getting a delay here?
No,
Tom,
I'm on.
I'll give
I'm
it to
on.
you. I can see you. We'll go with we'll go ahead and let Tom chime in first. What do you got for us, Tom?
Oh, I just love that. Interesting thing. I was like what you were just talking about earlier on the online attacks. I was just watching Musk in the White House, and the press attacked him, and hard questions, and the guy just answered them and said, "Yeah, you're right. Be right." And that was just a wonderful thing to see, in our government and just in general and how to do what you're saying here is just address them, show up.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something where I see this so much in politics, but I also see it in the corporate side when it comes to PR crises, right? People want to spin and they want to create this bullshit to try and get around actually addressing the issue. Whereas if you just come out and say, yeah, I believe that, I think that, right? This is what I'm doing. Okay. And then that's the end of it. And you're not sitting there groveling. You're not sitting there kind of, trying to spin it, trying to get around the issue. You're actually addressing it head on. It's a complete game changer, and it puts you in such a strong position.
Yeah, it was great. It was just great to see that. I mean, like I said, whether you like it or not, it was just good to see a little bit different action being taken by an individual in front of the press. Well, like I said, obviously he's being attacked, sometimes good reasons, sometimes bad. So that was my thought about what you were saying earlier about the online attacks.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for chiming in. Aaron, what you got from me?
Yeah, man. You and I had kind of joked about that woman that was the suing Lyft, right? And really it kind of did trigger something for me, because here you had this woman who was too big for her Lyft car, and the driver's like, I don't know if you're gonna fit, and she's the one that went off on Lyft, and she's suing Lyft for it, and I so then I came across that other video I showed you yesterday, where she goes into a radio station to do an interview, and then she gets upset because they don't have a chair that's big enough for her. And I was like, and for me, I'm a big guy, right? And I married a big gal. But if I go to watch a ball game here in Tampa, can't go to the Trop anymore, but if I go to a ball game and the seats are too small for my fat butt, That's my fault. It's not their fault for not accommodating me. So it just kind of made me think of, like, as we're looking at public relations and how we deal with our own brand, we got to take responsibility for ourselves too. Kind of like what you were saying. Like, if it means just own it, then just do that and own it. And you're going to get so much further if you just own it and say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have had that third Big Mac for lunch with my 2 large fries and a Diet Coke. But
Always a Diet Coke, right?
Right. It was always a Diet Coke. So, it was just something like, we should really just be owning our own stuff. And, I find that, that in all aspects of what I do. Part of what I do with a group that Jeremy and I are both a part of in the core is I run a Bible study on Tuesdays, and that's part of it. And that's part of what what we talk about all the time is let's not judge other people for just being imperfect in a different way than we are. Let's just own our own stuff. And so we talk about that kind of thing all the time.
I love it. And that's kind of an interesting perspective. Obviously, from a public relations perspective, taking that approach is obviously going to get you a lot further ahead. But take a step back and look at it holistically from a business perspective. Like, you've got your bookkeeping company. Imagine how it would look if you made a mistake in there, and you're like, well, that's because of, there was a storm and I was not focused, or the power went out, or whatever. And like, that's why you now owe an extra $30,000 in taxes or whatever, right? Like, that's not going to ever be a good look. So, taking that accountability and being completely honest and owning whatever the situation is, definitely it helps us from a PR perspective, but it also helps us in our business overall as well. So, and that's always been, the mindset that I've seen from you. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that you agree with me on this.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
All right. So what we're going to do here, guys, I'm going to wrap up here in just a second. Chrissy, if you can go ahead and drop a tag to both Tom and Aaron in the Facebook group so people can connect with them if they'd like. I would encourage you guys to find and connect with them. 2 great entrepreneurs, lots of opportunities there, super smart people and high integrity. So I would encourage you guys to look for them. Tom and Aaron, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and roll to this. Whoops. All
Thanks,
right.
man.
We got a little. My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Thank you, Chris. All right. So that's a wrap for today, guys. If you're watching this as we're streaming and you're watching it on a platform that's not Facebook, go ahead and hit that QR code up there. You'll see these QR codes throughout the segments. And if you hit that with your camera, that will take you to various things. In this case, it will take you to our Facebook group. We've also got the Spartan community, the private community, which I don't think we have any QR codes for that up. But yeah, definitely pop in there. There's a lot of people. So obviously I'm teaching, the topics like we're talking about here today, but there's also a lot of people in there like Tom and Aaron and tons of other entrepreneurs that you guys can network with, connect with, find other opportunities, and, grow your business in other ways beyond just the marketing and public relations stuff that we talk about here in these live streams. So I encourage you guys to go out there in the groups, engage with those folks, look for opportunities, and look for ways to help each other out. All right. So that's a wrap for today, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.